So
At the end of the day, what could we legally,
eliminate. And
Eliminate.
you know, we have this, yeah, we have
Read my
S.
memo, page 2.
I will, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
These are all
Okay.
the things that
Look,
that
Are you
passing them out?
They're not
yeah, it
required.
is now six.
Wait a minute, do you have
Made
an extra
copies,
copy?
But, yeah, here,
There you go.
It is now 6:08. My name is Jerome Garza. I'm calling the Home Rule School District Charter Commission Accountability Subcommittee to order.
Thank you.
If we can just go around the room, all the people who are present for the record.
Julie Sandell, present.
Lou Blackburn Jr., present.
Bob Weiss, present.
Okay, and our presenter that we have today is Dr. Oakley. What we're going to be discussing first is reviewing the accountability of the DISD. The suggestion was, as we look at accountability of the district, we look at it from the standpoint of what sort of accountability the district has at the federal level that's brought down, the state level, and then of course through the DISD. The whole reason for the discussion has to do with in many of the public hearings that we had attended, there seemed to be a number of individuals saying there is simply too much testing done on the students and not enough time allowed for curriculum. So that is the reason for this discussion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Oakley as she navigates and educates us on the accountability that we have to operate under.
Okay, and, so first of all, this website's a little bit new, so.
So you're gonna.
It is new, it is on the DISD website, correct?
It is?
No, it's
Yeah.
TEA.
No, it's
Oh, that's
not.
TEA.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you say the federal, okay, we can get rid of federal, because right now federal and state are the same.
Okay,
We'll look at state accountability,
okay.
and
Mr. Chair, for the record, could Dr. Oakley give us her title in the district in which she
Okay.
does, for those of us who don't know?
Dr. Oakley, if you'll just state your title for the record. I requested a recording of
Yes.
this, so there is a recording going on.
okay.
It's in the chair, I know.
That's okay, I think the
My
district's
name
doing
is
also.
Cecilia Oakley. I am the Assistant Superintendent for Accountability, for Evaluation and Assessment.
Okay.
Accountability has been removed from my job description. Because, but anyway, accountability at the state level system, it only deals with the STAR.
Okay.
Which is STAR and EOC. They do look at some other, for one of the indexes, some of the ACT, SAT at the high school level, so that's pulled in. But it's only the STAR. So do you want to go deeper into that? If you're looking at just the number of assessments, is that kind of the point of it, so that you can go? STAR is definitely for state accountability.
What grades, just tell us what it is for those of us who don't know.
Okay. Before you continue, one of our commissioners did join us, if you'll state your name.
Ron Oliver.
Okay,
Good
thank
evening.
you.
How are you doing?
Good. Okay, so I wish I would have known. I could have had some, I have some forms to pull out. I could have pulled out really easily. So for 3 through 8, it starts with grade 3. 3 through 8, every grade has reading and math. In addition, grade 4 has writing, as does grade 7. In 5th grade, it has science, as does 8th grade. It has science, and 8th grade also has social studies. That's 3 through 8. I think I got it all.
Okay.
For high school, it's no longer by grade, it's by subject. It's the 5 EOCs.
The EOC means,
It's the end of course exam.
End of course exam,
Real specific
right?
for Algebra 1, Biology, English 1, English 2, and I think it's world history. I can never remember.
It's US history.
US history.
I do have a question. We're talking about STAR and then you said EOC.
So
Do they mean the
EOC
same
is-
thing?
Yes. That's the whole STAR program.
Uh-huh.
But the end of course exams are specific for high school. But it's
But we
STAR
could-
EOC.
But they're still STAR.
Yes.
We're still talking about STAR.
STAR, yes.
Okay. I'm a high school teacher, I know EOC, but I thought they meant the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. So we have English 1 and 2, Algebra,
1,
Algebra 1, US History, and what?
biology.
Biology, right.
Okay.
Now, we do have sometimes some kids taking Algebra 1 in middle school. And so they can start, when they start getting credit, sometimes in 8th grade, and so they'll have to take the EOC. So sometimes there's a carryover there for the Algebra 1. But for the most part, they have to have those 5 to graduate.
Mhm.
So they have to have that. That's not even accountability, they have to have it for graduation.
Okay.
But they are also part of the accountability.
Okay.
So there's all different ways they use that. There's 4 indexes. For index 1, they just look at percent passing. For index 2, they look at progressing. How have they progressed from one year to the next? And there's several ways to get points on that. Index 3 is the gap, the student groups, really looking at student groups and how well they progressed one year to the other. And then the last one, index 4, is college readiness, and so how many are getting to the recommended level, and then that's for middle school and elementary, and then for high school, they tack on the graduation rate, the graduation plans, and college readiness tests like ACT, SAT. So that adds a little bit more at the high school level.
Now, how do they get the SAT and ACT? They require people to take them? No, those are voluntary and they're private tests.
Right, and that was the case, but this last year, we had all of our 11th graders take SAT in school testing. And then this fall, we had our seniors taking ACT in school testing. And we paid for it all.
Okay, I actually had a question about that. The PSAT, which only counts in the 11th grade,
Counts?
that, if you want to get a scholarship
Oh.
through the College Board, okay, it only counts in the 11th grade. So the only people that take those, the score data is us for 9th and 10th. 11th, they can actually get National Merit Scholarships. That's what it was originally intended for. My question is, this year, my school paid for the 10th graders to take it when it has little or no outcome for them down the road, and only a few 11th graders, because we, Hillcrest, paid for that. So why would we have kids taking a test that is measured only at 11th grade scores in the 10th grade? And can I continue?
Yeah.
And the SAT was given to, anyway, my seniors had already had the ACT by the time we gave it this fall. Most of them stayed home. They've already taken it. They're already accepted to college. They would have taken the ACT last spring. So I guess I was just saying, shouldn't we think more about how the students actually use the test for themselves to figure out who to pay for when we do it? Because, I mean, I had kids just not come. They've already taken the ACT. They're seniors. And the same for the SAT. It seems like we're testing them kind of too late. Anyway, that was just, it was interesting to me how few kids.
I can't answer that question. I could talk to Linda Johnson, who's with College Readiness, and see what the thinking was, but I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sure that was the case, and this was the first year we were doing it.
Yeah, no, I know that. I was just confused.
I think in 10th grade, PSAT puts you in the program for tech, summer college programs. Our daughter did that.
No, I
And,
usually take it in the
dual-
7th grade
and dual
to get
credit.
into the Duke program and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
that's at 7th.
Mhm.
But does the district use PSAT scores for anything?
Well, we are gonna start using it for as a predictor for AP classes for the TEI for AP teachers. So it provides a score of how you'll do on college readiness, and so or on AP,
Mhm.
and so it's kind of using it for as a prediction.
No, I think it's a great idea, but they used to give it to 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. So we had prediction, and then 11th grade where it actually matters to the kids, where they can get scholarships, and now we've kind of cut back and we're not testing everybody. When we tested everybody, it was like great, but
Well,
now it's
I think
like
they are testing everybody and paying for it.
our 11th graders.
Well, it was the 10th graders that are getting paid for. Anybody else, then you would have to pay. So we
Okay.
pay for the 10th graders for PSAT, the 11th graders SAT, and the seniors ACT.
Yeah.
Currently.
And that's part of, we do that for the state system that gets fed.
No.
this current accountability system does look at that, if you have that data for some of the students. And we'll have more and more as we go forward, because we're testing more and more of those kids with SAT and ACT.
Are we required to have that for our state accountability, or is that just extra data we gather?
It's not required, but it provides some additional information for kids that are to see if they're college ready. Otherwise, you got to go back to their 11th grade when they took the tax and to see if they're college ready, which is like a 2-year lag. That tax will be going away.
Yeah.
But then, so SAT, ACT would be there. They also do on the, aside from accountability, there's some distinction awards. And on the distinction awards, you have some, you get credit for those, for having more students take the test participation. And, what the other part is. So you get, but those are just distinctions and not part of accountability, but it gives you I made that. In comparison to my 40 comparisons schools, I'm in the top 25% of that. It's just a distinction.
But those are DISD.
No, those are states.
Statewide.
I'm still talking all state.
Okay.
So according to the media, it looks like STAR, the commissioner keeps pushing the cut scores back, or they seem low. If you're a member of the general public like I am, you read that in the paper and it says so 40% is passing. So can you help me understand exactly what constitutes the whatever cuts means?
So it's not, like, when they developed the test, and they did this for tax also, there is a panel recommendation of where the cut score should be.
The
okay?
cut.
The passing score, where it should be. But this is a really much more rigorous test, and so they gave you, for tax, they had 1 standard deviation, 2 standard deviation, and so those were for 1 year, then the next, I think for 2 years, and then you got it. So it was kind of a built-in or a slowly get into there. So for STAR, it was the same thing. We had a phase-in level 1, phase-in level 2, and then it was going to be the recommended. And it was supposed to be every 2 years. Well, after the 2nd year STAR, and the growth hasn't shown in the STAR like we saw in the tax, to go into that next level, putting into the phase-in 2, would have really, and without the increases that they hope to see, would really put our students at a disadvantage, and our scores would be really low, especially at the ELC level where it is a graduation requirement. So they've decided to hold off another year before they raise it. So they're not lowering it, they're just not raising it yet to that recommended.
So what is the cut score for the current, what's the current rate?
We're at phase-in, first phase-in. It's a scale score, and each test and each subject has a different scale score.
Give me an example.
Let me see if I can pull one up.
I mean, for our purposes, and I'll be done, I think parents want to know how well the school is doing, and you get the front page story. It's easy to understand SAT, ACT, third party does that. It's a little myopic when you see it coming from Austin and you read it in the Dallas Morning News.
Did you have something to add?
When I remember, when we went into the tax score, before they became STAR, you could be commended on what was it before that, TOS or something like
Yes.
that. You could be commended on that
37.
and not pass the next the rigor for the next set of tests for the tax. Meaning that they've done away with a lot of the detailed questions. So I guess when you're asking that question, it may be around 55% or 52% or 56% for passing rate. But if you compared it 8 years ago, they'd probably be about an 88% or something like that. Because the difficulty of the questions is also increasing every test, not just the measure of how they have to pass it. The rigor is really in there.
No, I understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to waive it for the purpose of our commission.
No.
I think Chapter 12 is.
But I think that's one thing that people don't understand when they see a 55 passing rate or 56. Comparatively speaking, 8 years ago, it might have been in the 80s.
Yeah, the problem we're going to confront is, we're here now. I don't care what happened 8 years ago. You know,
Right,
all you want to
right.
know is what's the here and now, and is there any validity to the year before and the year
You
coming?
need to have an understanding of where the district is, you need to know what the state average is, because that's your only
Right.
thing to compare to. So in isolation, it may not mean anything. So if the state's at 50 and the district's at 40, you now know where you stand in relationship to the state, because that's the only thing that's meaningful, is where you stand in relationship. Obviously, you want 100% of your kids passing, but with this more rigorous test, especially if it hasn't been built up. So the kids up here in grade 11 haven't had that rigor as now expected, but if they stick it in that test, they're not ready. We know even ACT or SAT, we have a lower average, so our kids are not there. So they're trying to build it, but you've got to start from the bottom. They're third graders and our fourth graders, and build them, and then they're ready for fourth grade ready for that, tackling that. And if they're passing, then by the time they're in high school, they should be ready, and those passing standards could be on recommended by then. So they should have started possibly with this phase in with the lower levels, I don't know. Or start the testing with the lower levels and you build it up as you go, or something like that.
So is the data disaggregated by race?
Mhm. Yeah. So, there's so many places I can take you, I'm trying to figure out. We have the taper reports, which are similar to the old AEIS. They're out there, you can pull them.
Okay.
There's the accountability. This went to the STAR, but by the way, here it says total mandatory testing days. If you wanted to see something like that, I don't know. There it is by grade and by subject.
And that's not what we can get out of. This
No,
is required by law.
it's not actually that many days.
All right, so anything above this is added on by the district, is that right?
I'm sorry?
I said anything beyond
Yes.
STAR is locally driven, subject to whatever recommendation we might come up with.
Yes, except for some of the special student populations.
Right, Julie has pointed that out. So it's anything regulated by the feds is off the table.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then if you, do you want to go back now to local, or do you still want more on accountability?
Well, in your professional sense, does this give a good indication of how the district's doing? Because we're going to be asked that.
The STAR?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, because they're supposed to be aligned to the SAT, ACT, they start with that and sort of bridge it down. And so, and they're gonna correct as every 3 years they're gonna be looking at that. So if we're talking about being college ready, ready to enter college, then it's gonna give us a look at where we are.
Because-
But always in comparison to the state, because the state's need did not have that.
Because of the ACT and SAT?
Yeah.
But not the rest of the EOCs?
No, the EOCs also.
Okay.
The EOCs are all supposed to be aligned to being college ready.
They just call the STAR the EOC
Right,
once you get to
so-
high school, but
and-
it's the 5-star test for high school.
So, but you were going to use the PSAT in 10th grade as a predictor for success in AP?
Right, for the teacher evaluation system.
For what?
The teacher
Oh.
evaluation system, the TEI, I think it's effectiveness.
So if a child who doesn't do well on the PSAT would not get into the AP courses?
No.
Yes, they do. They self-select.
But that's not what.
No, I'm not
purpose of it.
asking that.
Oh, okay.
The purpose, what we're doing is,
It predicts success. It
right,
does.
so we're saying, all the kids that go in, anybody, they're not really have had the rigorous work, they come in. The AP teacher says, there's no way I can get them ready to even get a 3, because they're real behind. The PSAT shows where they are in 10th grade. They enter a class, and we're gonna say, okay, based on that prediction, if you can get them to a 2, you've done a lot of work for them. And we're gonna give you credit. They didn't get a 3, but their prediction was a 1, and you gave them a 2.
So this is for the teachers'
It's for the
effectiveness
teacher.
in the.
Yeah, it's for the teacher evaluation.
But does it help the kid who's sending that off to college, because it's a 2 instead
Well,
of a 3?
No, but they've moved that child a lot, and that child's learned, and there's research that anybody in the AP is probably gonna do better in college than never being in an AP class.
Well, and I can actually speak to that. I teach a 9th grade AP class, so the PSAT does me no good because they take it after. But if I have a kid that doesn't speak English very well, and they make a 2 on my AP exam in the 9th grade, those colleges are gonna look at them with a lot of interest. They took the class, it was hard, they took the test, they made a 2. That was a huge accomplishment for them. So all my kids that take AP, no matter what they make on the test, as 9th graders, colleges will go, wow, you take hard classes, this is great, and then the 2 is good. So she's right. If I can get kids to a 2 who should have made a 0 because they just put their name on it,
Yeah.
that's a huge deal. And it's a huge deal for them because then they take AP in 10th and 11th and 12th, so they're getting themselves going.
Yeah, they're
Because I teach
getting
AP at such a low,
rigorous
you know, in the 9th and
But
10th.
that doesn't add to the star one way or the other,
No.
that's just locally driven.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I appreciate you sharing that, I gotta kind of contemplate. If you ask the Educational Testing Service, have they opined that their PSAT is a predictor of AP success?
They provide some,
Mhm.
they actually do an analysis, and that's what we're using.
And so that's the correlation you're using,
Yeah.
provided by Educational Testing Service?
Who gets paid for this?
Oh, man.
It's
Well,
college
can we
board.
put that on the agenda? That's something we can look at, because I
Yeah.
have to just say, Dr. Oakley, that makes me uncomfortable, because in the old days, it used to be pre-algebra in 7th grade, then algebra, then the honors track, and you got up to AP. So that system locally has gone away, I mean,
No, that's not, you're confusing two things. I was said, I'm using the data
yeah.
to help, provide information for the teacher evaluation system. The kids are still doing what they're saying, they're going into pre-AP classes, they're going into, AP. We're not putting them in because they're in, PSAT says that although that helps counselors put them in AP classes, but, we're not talking about that track, if you will.
Okay, so I think it's an important distinction between using it for teacher evaluation,
Right.
which I guess under chapter 12 we could talk about under our accountability subcommittee. That's an issue. Then the other issue is, how does the accountability system just track kids? So, you know, there was an expectation of this charter commission to kind of figure out, it's one of the 4 things for us to look at, does the accountability system accurately reflect what the kids are learning? And I appreciate your putting the 2 together. I would just say, for our purposes, Mr. Chair, that we need to separate that, because I think you're raising a good point. I mean, frankly, I hadn't even thought of even examining the TEI in terms of accountability system. I was really just focused on, what does the data tell us about how well the district is doing for the kids, because that's what I hear from, you know, parents. But I think that's valid, and I now have a better idea how it is blended, if you will, but I'm kind of deconstructing it and pulling it apart, because now I'm not really clear, coming down from STAR, what happens locally to help me understand what tests are given. I think, you know, I was a proponent back in the day of the SEI. I don't even know if that matters anymore. How we know and tell the public how the kids are doing, and how much of testing has to be done to track the kids, either in a cohort. And then I think it's fun to kind of circle back around and see how it ties into the TEI. I hadn't even thought of that.
A lot of the testing we're doing now is for the TEI.
It's not to measure the kids' improvement, is that what you're saying?
But we're trying to show that we have an effective teacher, and if you have an effective teacher, you're impacting the achievement of the kids.
So without putting you on the spot, one last question. So
No,
if we
no.
did not have TEI, would we be having the local testing regime? I know you'll explain it to me, because I don't know what it is anymore.
A lot of it was already in place. We're using what's already in place to impact I think the only difference, we've added elementary ACPs. We had elementary benchmarks in the past, and we've added the elementary to make sure they're covering the what's needed to cover in the semester, and have a final exam for the student, and so there's some consistency across. That's why we've always had ACPs. Because we have ACPs, we can also
ACP stands for?
it's our version of the end of course, the semester exams. And we've had those forever.
Do you have a slide of how all that works locally?
No, not here, because
Okay.
this is not this is the
From
website.
TEA.
Yeah. No, That's local. This is only from TEA. So, I mean, I can probably provide something to you that later.
So what is the series of tests that we do locally? Or, and then what are the measurements called? That would help me.
Well, okay, so we have the STAR 3 through 8, and
Mhm.
the EOCs for high school. Then we have the,
I'm sorry, real quick, the STAR is only given at the end of the year, correct?
yes, one
Yes.
time.
Okay.
Well, not one time, because we have fifth, they have a couple of administrations with the SSI grades, but only in the spring.
Could you say that again? I didn't hear it.
The 5th and 8th grade have our SSI grades, they're the Student Success Initiative, this is a state thing. So those kids have to have passed the STAR to go to the next grade.
Okay.
And so we give them an early administration. If they fail, if they pass, they're fine. If they fail, they have a second administration before school's out. And that's only in reading and math. And then they even have a third administration in the summer. The first 2 administrations are part of the accountability. The third one is to make sure the kid passes. So yes, only in the spring with that exception. Of course, the kids that take the EOC, they have to continue to take it until they pass, because it's a graduation requirement.
How many bites of that apple do they get? That's the state EOC,
Yes.
not our local one.
They, there's the 3 administrations, there's the summer, December, and spring of the year.
So just thinking back to TEI, if a kid requires 3 bites of that apple, that goes against the teacher who taught that.
No,
class.
they'll only probably take the first bite.
Only the first bite counts?
For the teacher, because you start getting fewer and fewer kids, and the statistics
Okay.
don't look out as well.
Well, and may I speak another interesting thing? I've been hearing the frantic announcements over the loudspeaker for all the kids who are juniors who still have not passed English 1 or English 2 or both. They're having tutoring, so that means they didn't pass it as 9th graders, they didn't pass it as 10th graders, or 11th or 12th graders now. So you couldn't really put it on any teacher at this point, because, you know, they're years down the road where they should have passed it, and there's a bunch of them that have not passed it. I don't know the reasons why.
Right.
I can tell you that when they gave the World Geography Star, my kids rocked on that, and they failed the ACP for the district. So it was not my experience that the STAR was more rigorous than the ACP. It was my experience the STAR actually was more pointed towards what we learned, but I don't know anything about the other tests, so I can't speak to them at all.
We did our best, even at the state, the social studies is where is the highest.
I've heard that the U.S. history is quite a good test.
I'm sorry, I
it
didn't
always
hear a
has
word
been.
you said.
Yeah.
The U.S. history EOC as the state is where we're doing the best.
Mhm.
And as our district, our social studies EOCs or tests on tax have always been right matching with the state. Our district does really well in social studies.
Yeah. When they gave the STAR for geography and world history, we did well on that too.
So what I'm hearing is you can do well on a STAR, but not on the ACP.
Well, that's the first time I'm hearing something like that. We really do a lot of correlations with the ACP to the STAR, and they correlate highly. Depends on your group of kids. But if they do correlate highly, because we're testing the same student expectations, the same teeth as the curriculum.
Good.
I think you were going from the STAR to the ACP, which is the district test, and that's given at the end of each semester?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was going to, yeah, so we have, you want to?
Well,
Go ahead,
no,
Ron.
Go ahead. I have a question, because I do elementary, I do art in elementary. Why are the ACP tests given in English to kinder and first grade when their predominant language is Spanish in the class?
Because from what I understand, the instruction in art is still in English, and the terminology is still in English. It's not in Spanish, therefore,
In what class, though?
in the art class.
Well, it is, but we only see them 45 minutes a week. The issue is, do they take the other exams in English or Spanish?
It depends on the language of instruction, so if they're taking the, usually reading is in Spanish, and
Right.
for those kids, then they'll take it in Spanish.
Okay, because I think I actually sent you an email when we started this. I wanted to know why, if they're seeing a teacher 10 times as much during the week, if they take math, they see them 90 minutes a day times every day. That's, twice the amount in one day that they see a specials class for the week, because we only see them 45 minutes. I never felt that that was a good or a fair way to assess the child at that age. So I'm just trying to think, I know we instruct them at that age in English, but if I say the word shade to them in class, it represents the color of gray. And in the class where they're just learning English, shade means the shade from a tree. So they have a lot of issues with language when it comes to ACP testing. And that's just an example. There are many more examples like that, especially when they correlate to math. So I never understood. I know we do it for the TEI, but I don't know if if it's penalizing the teacher, that's one thing, but I don't know if it's actually penalizing the child in the same way.
I'll talk to my husband, Aaron, I know he knows that
Right.
too, but we'll look into it more.
I
Okay, so
guess
we have the,
I'm sorry, I have a question. If we're gonna continue with testing for the TEI, then I guess we need to figure out, do we have anything we can say about, if that's required for the TEI and the TEI is required, can we then make any changes to the testing if it's required for the TEI?
It's not prohibited, this is the opt-in or opt-out.
No, it is not prohibited.
So what
by
I'm
the
trying to
statute.
suggest to us is to deconstruct, make
Yeah.
really clear, we understand what's required by law.
Right.
That's off the table. We know the Fed is off the table, we know STAR, whatever it's gonna be called, is off the table. I'm just trying to get some context, because I didn't know until a few minutes ago that EOC and STAR were the same thing, and yet ACPs are given midpoint and then given at the end of the year. So for a consumer like me, if I had kids anymore, but it's an empty nester, if you're already taking STAR at the end, why do you take
Well,
ACP?
well, for those 5 courses, there isn't a second semester ACP because they're getting the.
Right, so, but it's that kind of confusion. So when you're measuring the progress of the kids, the ACP is a district test midpoint, used somehow to help. Forget what it does for the teacher, because they do think we can revisit TEI, at least how the
Yes,
tests are
that was
used.
just my point.
Yeah, but.
What's done only for the TEI.
But I think that's what I'm trying to deconstruct. I
Okay.
mean, is so but the state requires the end of semester in those 5 things, those 5 subject tests are still then part of TEI. So, there's going to be a confluence, or if you're looking at a Venn diagram, we're going to have an intersection where part of what's state required has been overlapped into what is only locally required.
Mhm.
And if you're going to pull that apart, that's something we by right could look at, whether we want to, make a recommendation. I'm just trying to understand, and I appreciate your patience here, Dr. Oakley. How many tests are given locally? How, and what are actually required. So now we know there's an overlap, but it's not over-tested.
So we have all the grades K through 12 now taking ACPs at the end of semester 1 and at the end of semester 2, with the exception of the 5 EOCs. They don't have a final exam. They have it in the core. I think 3 through 5 have it in the 4 core subjects. And K2 is just reading and math. And then there is the art, and we have the art, the music, and the PE. It alternates grades, but, so no one student is getting those three exams, they're only getting 1 exam every year. So in kindergarten, if they took music, then in first grade, they may be taking PE. And then, so the teacher gets a sampling of his students, but the student's only getting 1 of those. So we have, so this is the non-core.
Non what?
Non-core subjects that we're
Okay.
getting ACPs for. So those 2 tests. Now at K2, they also have the norm reference test, which right now is the ITBS or the Logramos for K2 end of year exam.
So do you have a chart by grade, how many tests any given student will take? Could you supply that to us?
Yes.
Not for TI purposes, just
For the students.
here's the, I remember in the day ITBS was thought of as a pretty potent measurement whether kids were progressing. Forget the ACPs for a moment. So is ITBS only issued at the end of 2nd grade?
K2,
K2?
yeah.
Is there a
We-
comparable national test before you get to the PSAT?
We used to give it in the ninth grade, but
We
that's
used to
been
give it
many years ago.
We should do it K9.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I can remember years ago at Hillcrest, when we would give the ninth grade
Right.
ITBS, and that was considered very predictive.
So what happens after second grade?
Got the star.
Pardon me? And then
The
STAR
STAR.
comes in and displaces the ITBS. We can't substitute ITBS for STAR.
No, because it's a state.
Right, but ITBS could be a better national predictor, right? Isn't that what it did? Iowa test the basics.
Yeah, but with the star being correlated with the ACT and SAT, it's probably at that rigor, just that it's not nationally normed, where you would see how you're doing nationally, it's just Texas normed, if you will.
Right, so if I'm looking and relocating, I always thought the power of ITBS was you had a national norm, so I could tell you if you left here and moved to Iowa, how poorly DISD was doing or how great it was doing. Now, all you can say is you're gonna move within Texas relative to whatever the state comes up with.
Yeah.
But
Right.
at the same time, I think that ITBS is Iowa's STAR test. And if I'm correct, there are a lot of states who no longer take the
Yeah.
I
ITBS.
don't think
ITBS
that's
was a
true.
national test.
ITBS is
It's not-
comparable to PSAT.
No, it's what?
It's comparable to
Yeah,
PSAT.
it's a-
But if you go to Iowa, that's
not
their
the
state.
state test.
No, no, I'm
Okay.
just
Not a
saying if
state
you
test.
move, Lou, I'm just saying if you move, Iowa
Yeah.
just happened to be, if I moved back to New Jersey, right, or my kids went to school here,
Right.
moved to New Jersey,
Right.
New Jersey has state tests, we have state tests. I tell my daughter Rachel, don't worry about your 4 grandkids. If you come here, whatever the national tests are giving under Governor Christie, find whatever would be nationally tested here,
Mhm.
which is the seduction in high school of the SAT, because there's no reliability between states of their
Mhm.
tests.
Right, but
So
the
Iowa
ITBS
just happened to be in the name of it, but it
Yeah,
used
it's
to
got
have a
nothing to do
lot.
with the state of Iowa.
But that's what I'm saying, in terms of being a quote-unquote national test.
It's
It
a
is a
national
national
test,
test.
highly reliable, generations of
ITBS,
data.
But
It's normed on kids nationally. And so when you're at the 50th percentile, you can say I do as well as 50% of the kids nationally on this test.
Just because it was developed by Iowa, it is used all over the country.
Yeah, I understand.
Just like the
but-
PSAT or the ACT or the SAT, it just happens
But
to
that's
still say
where
Iowa.
I read something a few months ago that said that they're having to change the test because so many other locations, so many other states are saying, we're not gonna give our kids the ITBS. So, sure, there are a lot of people around the country who are taking it, but not as many now as used to.
That's
There's
because
also,
states.
as far as
with-
non-reference tests, there's also the Stanford 10.
Right.
Mhm.
And there's also Terra Nova, and there's also, I'm not going like, and those are all national norm tests. Achievement tests.
Yeah, I think for our purposes, the point is well taken. This district has reduced its reliance on those and
Right.
gone more to the state
And then,
test.
since those are norm reference, then explain what the STAR is. The STAR, while it's norm in the state, is a criterion reference test. We're looking at mastery of curriculum. And so that's where you're always gauging where you are as far as this particular curriculum. Whereas the norm reference test is sort of national standards and it's just where you fit as far as in comparison to the rest of the kids. And a criterion reference test, that's why you want 100% mastery of the
So
curriculum.
what kind of test is the SAT,
Those are norm.
right? And ACT is norm reference.
Norm.
So if
And
you're
so
a
is-
parent.
So is the PSAT.
And you're looking at those norm reference because that makes you internationally and internationally competitive. The problem in our accountability system, depended on the state of Texas, depending on your point of view, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, is that in the past, in my youth here, when my kids were in school, there were more norm reference tests, so you could see how you were doing relative in a mobile economy. Now, we're, criteria reference, but the benchmark for that criteria keeps getting moved
Well,
because.
they're trying to make it aligned to a norm reference test. And I think they are, but that's why we're not doing as well, because we're not at that caliber. It's probably like saying, they need to be at the 75th percentile on a norm reference test. They're trying to get our kids there, and we're just not there yet. We haven't had all the education going all the way up to get us.
No, but the SAT doesn't, they had the big change, but, they don't keep, excusing the bar. And I'm not being argumentative, but that's the perception that's left.
Well,
And that's
but-
part of the thing we're kind of finding
think
here.
about, yeah.
But Dr. Oakley, why did Texas move to the criteria as opposed, or why did they introduce that? Is it not because of, LEP students and,
No,
Mhm.
back to the teams, the TOS, the TACs, they're all criterion reference tests.
okay.
They're looking at covering the curriculum and seeing if they have mastered the curriculum.
And so to me as a parent, or if I was a teacher, I would want a criterion reference test, because if I'm a fifth
Right.
grade math teacher,
Yes.
I want to know that that student knew fourth grade
Yes.
math.
Right, and if you were looking for a job in HP and they were calling you back to California, you want the nationally normed test before you put your kid in Palo Alto and find out you've been in a disaster.
There's purposes for both tests.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm using hyperbole
Right.
here for the record, it's just to illustrate the kind of tension within the accountability system, that which we can't affect,
Mhm.
and that which we
Well,
possibly.
can I kind of summarize it
Yeah.
from my own brain? So STAR tests what we teach in Texas. And ITBS tests what we're
Whoa, whoa,
supposed to
whoa.
teach.
We use the test, we don't teach a test.
Oh, is that right? I'm sorry, I missed that meeting.
Yes.
I missed that meeting yesterday.
Okay.
But anyway, STAR is intended to find out how we're doing on what we're supposed to teach for Texas. Texas is not Common Core, we have our Texas stuff, which is cool. And ITBS is more of an achievement test, as opposed to have you learned this material? It's more, how well do you read? How much math do you know? Stuff like, they're used for totally different
In comparison
kinds
to
of
the-
things.
In comparison to the nation.
Yeah, and so there's room for, we have no choice about STAR. But there's room for the other as well. They do different kinds of things, I guess.
I would only add to your summary that as the district tries, and the state is mandating the district align its criteria test with the nationally normed test, PSAT, SAT, ACT, the process of explaining to the public when they're looking to us, well, what are you going to do about this, is trying to understand that this alignment, is that driven by the state, Dr. Oakley, the predictive ability in the youth? Because what they're saying is college readiness, is that a state requirement, SAT, or
No.
just a district one, in terms of defining college readiness?
The STARS aligned with SAT because they want it to be, predict that 24 on the SAT when you get there. But for accountability or testing, it's not required.
Right, so that is the gap.
Well, and it can't be required because most of the juniors didn't take it.
No, but I'm just saying,
Yeah, I'm
that's the
saying
gap,
that-
so.
yeah.
What we can influence, if we've made a recommendation, no more required, ACPs, that's what we do. We could say you have to take STAR, where the gap is this PSAT, ACT, SAT, if it's using as a predictive model, and they're saying a 24 would be college ready. I don't know if that's 1,800 on an SAT or what that means, but assuming it gets you into.
Well,
at
a
least-
21 on the ACT is comparable as a 990 on the SAT.
Right, and 990 wouldn't get you in the Naval Academy.
Okay.
But it's
we
called
also-
college
that was our
ready in
gap.
Texas.
So the way, for high schools, or the post-secondary indicators is college readiness, college ready graduates. They either look backwards to your 11th grade text, or they look at your current SAT. That's what they're doing. They're giving you other options to look to see if your seniors are college ready. That's the main focus on the state accountability. So that if you have that other data and you show that you are, you can use that data for your accountability. So that's.
So
In
we have
terms of
to-
showing student what do you think is, in your ideal system, what should we be, how should we be dealing with the STAR and these other tests?
In reference to being college ready?
Yeah, college ready, and how we tell the public we're making progress.
Ideally, having the STAR reach the recommended level is that you are on a track for being college ready, is what the STAR is supposed to be. If we were there, I think that would be meaningful, because if you can meet the recommended level in 3rd grade, that means you're ready for 4th grade. If you can meet it there in 4th grade, and then by the time you're a senior or junior, when you're taking those tests, those college entrance tests, you are ready for that material.
So what's above recommended is like commended?
Advanced.
So is there something below recommended?
No, there's really three
Okay.
levels: unsatisfactory, satisfactory, and advanced. The issue is that satisfactory, we're having in a roll-in model of standards, they have three phases, and the recommended is supposed to be college-ready. So your advanced is really even higher. than
Okay,
that.
so the recommended is comparable to the satisfactory?
Yes, once we're at that phase in recommended, we're still 2 phases away. but
Okay,
yes.
so in the current phase, what is the best that I could, if I wanted to say my kid's a rock star, what is the best that you would label my child?
An advanced.
Advanced, or, I mean, what label is put on that?
Advanced is the highest, but you're talking about, if you want to use a norm reference comparison, you're talking about like 95th percentile, which is very few kids, but you're at advanced, you're probably there. If you're at recommended, you're probably at the 75th percentile.
In the current phase we're
Yeah,
in?
but yeah, that's the recommended.
Right, so if you're
So phase in 1, you're lower.
okay, so what's lower then? What's the number, give me a number?
Percent?
Yeah, 60, 50?
Wait, what's the?
So unsatisfactory is what percent or whatever?
Oh, okay. It's so different by test and by grade, I can't spit that out.
Okay.
I can pull,
So for example, if recommended is 75%, then I'm assuming that unsatisfactory is anything below that.
So here's our degree of difficulty in this commission. You know, we want people to come back to the DISD, and I'm looking at a parent. If I said to you, hey, your kids are doing great, they're recommended, and it's just 75%. I don't know how that sits. And that's why trying to sort this out and give it meaning, holding out the TEI again and
Well-
again. What does that mean at 75%? Is that good, bad? Is that a C? a
Well, then
D?
I ask how many of the students get 75%?
Right, so,
Or how does that compare with the state? I mean,
Right.
more importantly is how does it compare with the
so here are the
state?
accountability ratings.
Okay,
Here are the 2014 accountability ratings. And then I'm gonna go to the district, because I want to show you some, so we just go to campus district.
can you enlarge the print at all on that?
Oh, yeah, just a minute, let me get to
Yeah.
the actual report.
And while you're doing that, does the district publish the ACP scores anymore? Are those like public?
No. They just go to the teacher to be put into their grades, as far as I know.
Well, we have it on our Destination 2020 metrics. There's an ACP value that in our goal there, as is the SAT, ACT, and participation, it's out there.
But the individual test scores are considered confidential,
right.
which they ought to be. Yeah.
No.
Now,
Okay.
I'm assuming that Taylor,
So this is Dallas.
what does he have?
This is the performance index.
Does he
This
have
is the
that?
passing.
Since he
Right,
didn't
we have
it
a
last year.
66. The standard was 55.
So, that means 66% of the kids passed at a 55% level?
No.
That means 66% of the kids pass, and in general, throughout the state.
55 was the standard that we had to meet this accountability.
So what does that mean though? What does 55 mean?
And it is 66% of the students pass all tests taken. So
That's
the
right.
kid is to count multiple times because they're going to reading and a math. So they look at all the different subject areas, they look at the kids that took it and passed, and you keep adding up, and then it's divided by the number of the students, and it's very complicated. All the background is on here, you can look it up, but that's where we are.
So the state simply said that 55% of your students had better pass. Now, y'all are distracting us.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Go
I'm
ahead.
discussing his awesome child.
No,
Sorry
no,
about
no.
that.
But the state said that 55% of students had better pass. Now, passing score may be getting 25% of the questions correct, maybe getting 75% of the questions right. But whatever that passing score is, the state of Texas said your district had better get at least 55% of them passing, and we got 66.
Yeah.
Well, and if you've been reading the newspaper, districts all over the state are struggling with the exact same thing that we are.
No, but my only point-
STAR testing is not working the way people thought it might go,
That
and
might
they're
be,
much
but
lower.
when you
This
see
is
a
what
chart
I'm
like
saying.
that, it doesn't inform you of
Well, I was
anything.
gonna
No,
say, if
it
you're a
doesn't.
parent, you would have no
Right.
idea what this
Right.
is about.
If passing is 13%, not
They're going
helpful.
to eventually have rating, because if you want to know, what have you grasped from the previous accountability? That you're a recognized school, school or exemplary school? Is that what would make you, know what that is meaningful?
Well, from back in the day, I would know what that means. This
Yeah.
is, I
So
mean, now
you're
that I'm a
not-
little.
So you get a rating as a district and a state, and so,
Can
I
you
guess
show
we're
a-
trying to figure out how that rating is calculated,
Can you
what
show
it
a
means.
so we get
campus-
standard as
Pardon
a
me?
district, and then later on, they're gonna come out with, I think, A, B, C, D labels eventually.
Okay,
Yeah,
but I
I-
don't know what net standards either.
I mean, we're not gonna be able to affect this. I mean, so,
No.
but just to explain it in any report we might or might do about how it flows down, because it drives how the district operates. And so to disentangle what we might wanna recommend that's different, that's driven by this, the question then is, what else do you have to do to get to whatever these bar graphs mean, which, again, with a floating standard, it lacks consistency, meaning. I mean, you're a statistician, how much faith do you, and I know we're being recorded, so I won't ask the question. If we weren't being recorded, I would ask you, as a statistician, how much, what level of confidence do you have? I know you know math. Don't answer if you don't.
No, I'm trying to understand what I think it still is meaningful. I think but you always have to have a comparison to know where you are. Because even a label of recognized doesn't mean that it's getting every
No,
child. So I think they're trying to say, we're looking at all the students, we're looking at all the subjects, and under index 1, this is the percent passing, and we're surpassing the bar. So at this stage where the test is, in comparison to the whole district, we're doing well. The second one, though, is progress. Are you moving your kids? Because even though they haven't passed, are you moving your kids? That's what the value added is in essence. It's a different methodology. And this is what you need to know. Now, the problem with this one is the bottom 20% is what makes the standard. You don't know that until it's done. And as long as you're not in the bottom 20% of the state, you're going to probably make it. And then you're looking at your student group. So it's all the deep down data helps the schools move their kids forward.
So it's the same data, but then it's grouped and
Yes.
calculated for different kinds of
Yes.
tests. That makes
So
sense.
when it
Except with
says it-
index 4, they have more stuff for high
Okay.
school.
So it says meet standard, is there a place where the public could easily get the definition of what the standard is? That drives the whole chart, does it not?
Yes, well, it's meeting these green lines here.
Is
The
that
green lines are the
75,
standards.
50? What do you have to pass to get, to follow up on?
You just have to
Five.
get over the green bar on all 4 of them,
And
correct?
this did go up, it went from 50 to 55 this year, and that's not moving anything about test scores, that we want 55% of your students passing.
But what does passing mean? I don't
Yeah.
mean
Meeting
it
that
fully.
standard, meeting satisfactory on STAR.
And that is answering 10 of the questions, 50 of the questions?
I don't go to that level.
But isn't that the essence of it, that
There-
they keep
that-
moving?
It's 2 standard deviations away from what recommended is, which means you're college ready.
So,
Okay.
understand,
Okay.
this chart tells you how the district is doing, and you can compare this to other districts. The campus sheets, which I think are pretty telling, or they're pretty interesting to look at.
Can you pull one up?
But
Pull up-
they look the same, but there's other place,
Philip Harry Stone Montessori.
No, pull up our Marine Gale, it's actually very impressive.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, I bet it is. Or Barack Obama, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Barack Obama, I just
I
know.
don't think they've had enough kids to have tested yet.
yeah,
They're
they
just,
do.
they're
Both
just.
of them are.
I mean, my point is, if you don't understand that passing, out of a test of 100,
Right.
you know 10 answers, and that constitutes passing, and 55% of the state of Texas gets 10 right.
Right, and looking at the.
It doesn't tell you that
You're right.
you can't go to New Jersey and say your kid is educated.
But looking at the district or even the campus level, that's not going to tell you that. You'd have to look at the individual child's scores.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. Oakley, on the,
Okay.
This
I can-
one is
here you
the,
go.
This, I
Lou.
think is the high school,
What school are we looking at? Doc?
Ryan Hill High School, because they have Ryan Hill Middle and one.
They have middle and high, yeah, so.
oh, okay.
I think this is, I can't tell. Oh, wait, this is the middle.
That's middle school, 6A.
So, so right here, here's the 55, they're at 100%.
Okay, that's a passing.
Yeah, and then they're.
So if you got 55%, that's passing.
If you got 55.
You met
Yeah.
index one.
In
You met
index one.
You have to meet all the standards for each of the index to be met
Right.
standard.
Well, is index one just the raw score?
Pass.
And then the others are all
So
different
100%
combinations?
got more than 55%.
Correct.
No.
No, 100%.
Pass.
Passed.
Passed.
But passing was
50
answering how many
55%.
questions on the test?
They took a lot of different tests, so.
55%.
This will not tell you
This is
anything
an
about school.
aggregation, I get the
Yeah.
math.
Right. I mean, if my
You know,
kids have a 55, they have failed abysmally.
Pardon me?
Passing is a 70
Yeah.
in grades.
In grades, but not necessarily on the STAR exam,
Why is that?
because the exams are just different.
Yeah.
They're aggregated.
And so, like she said, you may have, you can probably pass 60% on one exam and say you passed. You may have 50%. If you get 50% right on one exam, you passed.
And
That's
maybe
what
one's
they-
80% or something.
All right,
Okay,
Exactly.
okay, I get it.
Yeah, go
I
back
get
to the
that.
school, that's cool.
Okay.
So
Got it,
we're,
got it, got it.
we're not gonna change this, the question is
No,
how does
I'm
it
just trying to
drive?
understand
Yeah, no,
it.
I'm with you. It's-
Because
it's-
55 may be fine if you have 80% on one and 40% on another, because after the kids take the test, and then the experts look at the test and see what questions had real problems, and they get rid of questions, and they do this, and they kind of calculate it around how people did
Right.
as
So-
well.
So this is index one, this is the behind, the index one. Here are all the kids in reading math. Then you even go deeper. Here are all the kids, that took the reading, all the subjects, reading, math. Here it is by ethnicity. So you can look to see that deeper down of all the kids, how many, so this one is 100%, everybody passed in this,
So this is Rongal.
yes.
And so go to Sigaroa. Okay.
But before you do this, these are the distinctions
Yeah.
I was telling you about. These are not part of the accountability, but it gives you kind of another way to highlight yourself if you're doing well. But if you have 40 comparison schools, and if you're in the top 25% of them on all these different things, you get a distinction. And in this case, they got all of their distinctions, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, that's about the only thing that's going to let you compare, but even that, you're only comparing school or campus to campus, so.
Now, I can tell you that as a teacher, I have access to my students
Hmm.
and what their scores, actual scores were on every single test forever. So you can't individually look at everything, it's just a lot of data. My kids that failed the STAR in 8th grade were in my 9th grade class, you know, stuff like that.
Cigaroa?
CIG.
CIG,
I don't know.
ERR,
Cigar,
RRO, is it, oh,
Roy.
ARRO,
Isn't it AR? Two R's
Just click
and
search
an O.
and see what
Two
comes
R's,
up.
you're right.
I probably should just put, anyway, I'm just gonna put SIG and see what comes up.
I think there's 2 R's.
CIGARROA.
Thank you.
KRROA.
That's one of the
Yeah,
hardest
Cigaroa.
ones for me to spell. I don't know why. There we go.
Okay.
I don't remember, but on the student score sheets, does it tell how they did compared to others in the state?
On the individual
On the
students?
student?
I don't think so.
You mean the one the parents, the parents?
Right.
I doubt it.
No,
Okay.
it just tells their scores and
Okay.
whether they were recommended, advanced, whatever they did. Because I can print those off, the whole thing for each of my students, but that's,
So in this school, what do we, I mean, because I can't see
It's
the
Met
print.
Standard.
Okay.
They have 60% passing right here, if you want to call it that way. They met the standard, the index 1, 43, 30, 32. Now, for elementary and middle, that's just how many, index scores, how many they got recommended on that STAR. That actual panel recommendation, that's what this one is. 21% of them did.
So what's an interesting factor is Rangel, which 100% passing, only 49% showed progression, and yet you see 43% showing progression here.
Mhm.
So from the standpoint of who's doing better, Round Hill may not be doing better in progressing them forward. It's just an indicator to me they're really good coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to say is, I teach all pre-AP and AP classes, or I haven't. When I get kids that are already at the 99% level, when they come to me, I can't really get them a whole lot higher. So it does matter where they start out.
Mhm.
Well, and there was a ceiling effect with tax, they would be up there high, but with STAR, there is more room up there. So we
Right.
can differentiate until we get to that cap.
Yeah, but I mean, for my SEI or CEI, I can only take them that much, and so my progress doesn't look that much.
So what is the last bar on that chart say?
This one right here?
Yeah,
That was index 4, it's the
In-
college readiness.
College readiness.
Post-readiness, post-secondary readiness is what it's called. For elementary and middle, again, they're looking on the STAR at the recommended level. which is
and so what does that number say? I can't read it.
21.
So only 21% of those out of 100% are on a path at this point in their lives to be college ready. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, let's look at that report.
So that, I mean, to put it more negatively, that means 21 from 100 is 89.
Well, yeah,
79%.
there's some challenges there, yeah.
Right, so,
So
but
here's
when you
the
look at the
other
other graph, you're gonna say there's room to grow, but at this point in their life, if we compared it to what is a middle-class school anymore, I mean, I don't know in Dallas.
Stonewall.
Right?
Zumwalt?
No.
No, Stonewall.
Stonewall.
Stonewall Jackson.
Lakewood Elementary now.
Yeah.
The differential, I'm
Property
guessing, would be
Lakewood.
pretty significant.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right. But again, we can't do anything about this. The question
Lakewood.
is when it
Okay.
comes down to what the district adds on, this is a good way to sort it out. Maybe we don't have to do anything else. We're just gonna use state tests.
2 O's under Wood.
Yeah, 2 times.
What are you looking at? Lakewood?
I am so glad I'm not doing that. I mess up everything when
There you
people
go.
are telling me what to do.
I'm
It'd be like a
sorry.
blank-
I'm sorry, I
It'd be like a
apologize.
blank screen the whole time. You're going,
You're right, you're right.
So
Or my
this is
kids go, that
Lakewood?
doesn't work, I
Yeah.
don't fix it.
Yeah,
See, now look at Lakewood and look at index 4,
Right.
70%.
Yeah.
But that's the point I was trying to make, so.
Well, and the point that's been made throughout our hearings has been, as you look at economically disadvantaged children, there's where we're having our challenge. As you look at more middle-class children, they seem to be doing very well.
That's exactly right, I was gonna make that, this
I'm sorry, I
percentage of
can't hear you.
economically disadvantaged is probably really, they're not a Title I school, so they're really low. And they only have about 3 or 4 schools like that.
So in the rankings in terms of a public report for DISD, and you're looking at all, we know there's 43 IRs, which will probably be all poor. Those IR designations are by the state, right? And then on the other tail of the distribution, there'll be the Lakewoods, and I don't know how many of those schools there are on the DISD. Then there's a vast middle of the bell curve. Is that basically where we are?
I think you can summarize it that way.
however, even for Figueroa, it's possible for them to have a distinction for the post-secondary readiness, because they're compared against other schools.
Of like-minded.
Exactly.
But for the politics of our commission, I mean, you're gonna say, well, of like-minded schools within the DISD, that looks like it's achieving a lot.
Mhm.
All right, for the people the mayor wants back,
Mhm.
for the record, they're gonna be looking at that, and where they wind up is gonna drive as a determinant how they view the district and what they would expect us to write about.
Okay. Let me try and summarize it. Let me go around, and I'm going to start with Ron, who's spoken the very least, to make sure he gets his questions asked, because I want to thank Dr. Oakley for coming, but.
Before she goes, could you pull up the SEI, because they do want to ask you about that. Are we still
Okay.
using those, the school?
I cannot, this is well,
Public.
well, I can, go ahead and stop.
So I want to start with Ron. If there's any questions, clarifications, anything we're going to, because Dr. Oakley is going to give us, number one, the DISD testing schedule. And what was the second thing?
And the list of the tests.
Yeah, and the
Well,
list.
It's on the testing
It's on the
schedule.
Yeah,
schedule.
it's
Yeah.
the testing schedule.
Yeah.
Remember how you,
Yeah, I was gonna give the number of testing days per grade,
right.
okay, of the tests that were acquired. The testing schedule includes everything,
It
not just
does.
those 3 tests that
So
I just
when you
showed.
say required, district required or state? Remember, we're trying to separate it out.
It has codes for both.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I
Different
recommend,
colors.
last semester you came to Harry Stone and you did give us a wonderful sheet that also includes the number of hours for each test,
That's the
each
one.
grade.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the one.
Yeah, it's
That'll
this
help
giant
us
thing that's
assess
color coded.
what
It's
the
actually on the
burden-
district website, you can find it.
Okay, well, she's
Yeah,
gonna go
the
through.
calendar's on the district website.
Yeah, it is.
Ron, you're up.
Okay.
You're up, Ron.
Thank you, Dr. Oakley, for coming. I guess I really don't have a lot of questions. Just my question is, when we compare peer groups for assessment, like when you drop into the buckets, as Miles would say, they may show a lot of growth, but in terms of where they're headed for a career or college readiness, or maybe just a career opportunity in general, I feel like they're still at a disadvantage, because growth doesn't necessarily mean when you get out of high school somebody might hire you. Do you think these measures that we use in calculating where they're at, either through the district or the state, really have any bearing on how successful they're going to be once they leave high school?
I think, no, and there's a whole nother research agenda on college readiness and how it includes perseverance and grit and study habits and all that. And they're doing a lot of research, and we as a district have been part of that and looking at, because your GPA can predict how well you're going to do in college.
Right.
So all we can do is try to give them the tools, and so, but it's more than just the knowledge of the subject. You also have to be able to study well. You always have to be able to master all the application process just to get into school. And so we're working with them on getting the FAFSA done and the state application done, because those kids just can't even get through that process if they don't have anybody helping them through.
Right.
So there's a lot of work in our district moving those kids. And so having the PSAT also shows them, because we're also going to maybe have them take the TSI, which is the community college, because most of our kids go to community college. We look at that. If they would have to take remedial courses, and we know that early enough, we can get them ready if they're willing to help, work with us. So a lot of that tells us that information. So PSAT score can show that they're really low, and you want to go to college, and this gets you ready. So it is more than those test scores. It is, because kids that do horrible in school can be successful because of whatever they have, system they have created for themselves to make it, and yet kids who are really good in the content will also fail, so it's not alone that. And I think our district is really trying to do more than just the content.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
This is
Luke?
the SEI.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'll wait my turn. Leave it up there.
Okay. Luke?
You mentioned TSI, which is an exam I know, but I know they used to give TASP or something. Basically, when you go to a public college in Texas, yeah, if you can't pass this exam for read or vocabulary, I guess, or math, you're going to take those remedial courses.
Yes.
Now, are our exams, be it ACP or, I don't know, you don't have any control of a STAR, do they align with that to say that when our students?
Yes.
Okay.
That, and I think also the PSAT also allows you, depending on your score, to have dual courses, dual
Go credit?
Credit.
Dual credit.
that you can enroll in high school with the community college. And so that's one of those indicators we use also for that.
Do we have the capability to track that, track how they do when they leave DIS? Because that's always concerned me that we have a lot
Well,
of students that just.
We just, after a year or two, finally got a data sharing agreement with the community colleges, where they're going to give us the data of our kids in school, how they do, how they fare. We have information from the National Clearinghouse if they're successful, if they enroll, if they get a degree, but we don't know about the ones that don't. And so my department has finally worked out a data sharing agreement with the community college So we're just starting that work. We had been talking about this at least 2-3 years ago.
No longer.
Yeah.
I remember.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
it's, you know, and so with the, Linda Johnson, the college and career person in my group, doing that research of whatever it takes to make it, we're trying to
Oh,
get some of
yeah.
that information.
That'll be fantastic.
Yeah, it just takes so forever. In the meantime, you gotta get, you know, all these kids have gone through.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Excellent, congratulations on that. In terms of the schools, the campuses that do get distinctions, and this may be outside of your scope, but do you know if there's any type of knowledge sharing that's done to anybody?
We.
I'm sorry, best practice sharing.
Oh, as how they were able to get to that.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know, there might be some, you know, we try to share which schools have 1, 2, 3, 4 distinctions that's out there. Whether the schools or school leadership or EDs take that further and find out, I just don't know.
Okay, not a problem. Now, we all always have resource constraints and so forth, but if there was, well, I guess, what else do you wish you could do in terms of improving the district from your department? So are there capabilities or things that you say, it would be really good if we did this, but we just can't?
Let's see, oh, gosh. You know, my perspective is always from the data part and not from the school.
Sure.
But in our research with college readiness, there is that whole person that I was explaining.
Mhm.
And we're starting to look at that like habits of mind, and I think at some of those schools, that was a concern of mine, that we needed to have that piece of that. And I think we're slowly starting to do that, but with all the, so much changes going on, you can't get it all in at one time. So it's
Mhm.
on the horizon. I think that's gonna be a critical piece. Cause, and that career building at a younger age, which is also for age 5, that's a critical piece. You just use it with my kids. One of them knew exactly what he wanted to do, the other one's like, I don't know what's out there,
Yeah.
you know. So this pathways that is required now, exposing them earlier in 8th grade and earlier, it really helps to get them focused in on where they want to go, and then those pathways will do it. So I'm really kind of repeating what, I just like those ideas that are being
Right.
provided. I think that's the right direction.
Conceptually.
Yes.
Okay. And I guess most importantly to the work we do, are there any, do you ever find that there are limitations by the state on what you want to do?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a zillion things, but in general, no. I like the way on the index 1, this is, there's so many layers below this.
Mm-hmm.
For the ELL student, that's always a concern of mine. For them to pass, it's like, really? Well, they've done something that's really, and you know why they've done it is because we have school people working on these accountability, getting it to where it is now. So for the ELL student who may not pass, if they correlate their Tel costs,
Mm-hmm.
which is a requirement for them, and the number of years they're in the school, and they've done some research, and if they meet a certain scale score, which may not be the satisfactory, but based on those 2 pieces of criteria, and they meet that, they're given credit for passing the test. That's something we can go get into politically, or did they really didn't pass the test, but for where they are, with the number of years there, and their language ability, those are that take it in English, not the ones that take it in Spanish. They're giving credit. I think that's so great, because there's no way you can expect them to pass.
And is that at all grade levels?
Yes, but those are the ones that are taking it in English. Most of our elementary are taking in Spanish, and it's the same criteria you have to pass. But it's the kids that are not Spanish speakers that are having to take, they're in ESL and having to take the test.
Okay. Yeah, my last question was related to that language gap, but, okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Julie?
Yeah, we now have quite a few early college high schools, or some of them. So they are dual credit, is that right? So I'm assuming that the students there have to take the it used to be the TAS, but the TIS.
Star. DOC star.
No, I'm talking about to get dual credit for college.
They have to meet the standard already. I don't think they have to take the TSI.
Okay,
Based on their, I think their PSAT, I'm trying to remember what Linda's told me, they're eligible for dual credit.
okay. But if they didn't take the PSAT, they'd take the TSI or,
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know that.
okay. My husband used to teach a dual credit class, and it was an AP dual credit combination class. And the kids that passed the task were getting college credit as well as AP credit. The ones that didn't were getting AP credit. So that's the way it
Yeah.
used to work, and I figured that was the case. Do you have any idea, are we going to, you have nothing to do with this, are we going to introduce dual credit classes back into the regular high schools?
They're every year.
They're not at my school.
Which school, like Hillcrest?
Hillcrest, yeah.
I doubt that.
Oh, I know they're not.
Oh, I doubt that.
Okay.
I'll find out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll find out. Any other questions?
Nope.
Bob, SCI.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think Dr. Ripley knows I'm a closet quant, so I'm gonna come out of the closet here. So, so before we get to SEI, did have a question on, again, in the context of our commission, the issue of the achievement gap. So this is kind of a multi-part question. You can come at it. How does this, forgetting SEI for a minute, how does, you know, how do we understand whether it's growing or not, either district tests or local tests? How often is that disaggregation? You know, I grew up during the court order, so Judge made everybody, Bill Webster, you know, had to disaggregate all the time, and everything got reported out in cohorts. This kind of blended, where you got to drill down, is a little more opaque than I'm used to. But granted, I'm an old curmudgeon, so for the record, I posit that to you. But I think what's crucial for us in terms of if we were to write a charter and we were addressing the issue of equity and disaggregated data, how do I know what the achievement gap is, in which direction it's going by grade and race? So that's one question. Second question is, under HB 5, we had these pathways. I think you were alluding to them, and there were like 4. And I'm not sure, after I read the bill, how they tie in to the accountability system and use as predictors, and whether or not we can in fact do anything in our, if we were to write a charter about it, because it's not really referenced in, you know, chapter 12 that we're dealing with, and so that's a general question. And then, you know, my favorite SEI, does anyone even care about it, and what are the variables now? I know when we last talked about a year ago, they've shrunk, but it does matter. In the old days, it mattered how many kids were taking the test, not just the scores. And to get to how you make movement in the model was to say if 50 was the baseline, the toughest movement was with the brightest kids, and the parents at those schools like TAG went nuts. And, you know, because people thought if there wasn't a lot of movement, you weren't measuring anything. So I'm not sure what the status of SEI is, what the model contains, and how is it, it's not state required, and how is it used when the emphasis is TEI rather than SEI?
Well, I'm going to start with that, and
Okay.
then you have to remind me of the other ones. We still produce the SEIs and the CEIs. They have been there just as a tool, which is what the original was.
Are they still on the website for each school?
Yeah, I just got it right now from the website.
Yeah,
They're
I'm
there,
sorry,
but
it's
yeah.
the print so small, I just can't read it.
And,
So pick a school and tell me, yeah.
And then we also even have.
Let's go to Hillcrest, because Julie's here. Can you pull me up Hillcrest?
I gotta tell you, we were 18 in the high schools. We all got our butts kicked for that.
On the SEI? So.
My principal was very unhappy.
And
Is,
they were-
Edie
Okay,
was
well,
very
let
unhappy.
her answer.
I can't, it won't open on this.
Well, that's because they did so poorly, plus we have a.
I'm telling you.
We're gonna give Jerome a shock.
Where are you normally at?
Back in the day when my daughter Rachel was there, it was at the top.
See, at Hillcrest, they were 46.1, 50 being average.
Mhm.
So here's the 18, they were 18th among all of the schools, that's what she said.
Of comprehensive high schools,
Yes.
not tech. So how many comprehensive high schools are there, Dr. O?
There are 22.
So 18 out of 22, puts you in the below, right?
It
That's the
does.
So
46.
Woodrow Wilson was number 1.
Which was bitter.
And what was their score?
55.7.
Same for WT
And,
They are
and
our
so,
rivals.
do you have the score from the previous year that they moved that needle?
Yeah, I was just gonna pull up the longitudinal one.
So do you think it still has relevance for understanding how the district's doing
Yeah.
school by
So
school?
they use them, it's part of the principal appraisal.
Okay,
It's one of the metrics they can get credit for, and for the CEI will also be one of the metrics they can get credit for. So for example, if you go teach reading, third grade reading, you're gonna get 3 ways to get your 5 or 10 points, whatever it is. Passing, or you're moving your kids, and you get points on your CEI, or this bucket you were referring to, which is a quasi form of value added. It's like a non-parametric way of our value added. So these are both growth, and this is status or percent passing. So you get, if the highest, you get the points which has the highest. So if the CEI had the most points, so you're gonna get your points for that metric or that measure in your TEI.
May I
both-
interrupt for just one second? The high school ratings, is there any way that they are transparent in any way? How are those even calculated?
what the I asked you that, do you have a way of pulling up the variables? There were 18 the last time we talked or something like that.
Yeah.
And the difference in the calculus here is that it shows movement, so it wasn't the score of your SAT or PSAT, it was how many kids were taking a black, brown, and white part of my
Right.
language.
Right.
It was how many did you increase taking it, then the next set was what were those scores, and those scores, because the whole point was to incentivize kids taking this. I mean, this is not new, and Linus Wright, when he was superintendent, got $1.5 million from the Meadows Foundation over 3 years in the mid-80s to pay so kids could take the SAT, because in most of the high schools coming out of DSEG,
So right
kids-
here, it shows that the grade 12 percentage of seniors who have ever taken SAT or ACT. For 9-12, it's the percentage of students enrolled in pre-AP or pre-IB.
could you
And-
just, I can't hear you with your headset, so speak
Okay,
up.
Hold on, let me make this bigger.
So does everyone understand for high school, these are the criteria, and there was a very good, it was hierarchical linear modeling, if you're into the math of this. And this was the original value-added model that became national. My only reservation is how it's used for teachers, because it was a school model. You either moved as a school, or you failed as a school. It wasn't an individual. The idea was to show the campus, and then for the leadership of the campus to understand where its weakest links were. That was the original theory behind it. Okay.
So it does include participation.
So for the grade 12, since we did pay for the SAT and ACT, that should bring all the high schools up. Because
it
it's a
was
higher
grade
percentage.
Yeah. So this year, they may have to, they may have to adjust that. Last year, it was, they were 11th graders, and so this still was in effect last year.
Okay, but that means that the kids that are grade 12 now did take it as 11th graders, so they will be in the percentage of people who
Right.
took the ACT.
Right.
So that's
may
raised
not be
that.
a variant that varies much, and they may have to delete that piece.
Yeah, if it's all paid for, the incentivizing piece of the formula goes away. All I'm saying is this has been going on since 86, 87, 88, 89.
Yeah, I was just wondering how
It
that
dropped.
affected it.
We tried to do it again by incentivizing the index to encourage more kids taking it, where I used to work paid when Marvin Edwards was the superintendent. So, this has been an ongoing struggle. If the district's going to pay for it, obviously that variable goes away. But the point of the index was to show the school movement. And, there were more, is there any racial data in there or poverty? I know there was a poverty variable back in the day. And I guess my feeling is the public couldn't understand it. This is a powerful tool. Now, I didn't know until just now that it's being used for principal evaluation. Again, it wasn't a tool for individual evaluation. That was not its original purpose. So this is all new to me tonight. But it's a powerful calculation if you want to see how a campus is doing.
And it
No,
says
no, I
potential
think-
Consider
effects
test
of
results.
background. It says potential effects of background variables over which schools have no control are used to establish the statistic. So it does look at GT, special ed, poverty. Like we use the average family poverty level on the census tract. It's still all part of it.
And what about mobility? That was the other issue. Is mobility variable? Because when you go to the school website or the state test, it's showing you the mobility of the school. So if you're seeing a school with 24% turnover and you're now a teacher, and I'm saying this for the record, I'd be taking a deep breath if 24% of my kids
Well-
are coming in and out of the building during the year.
What they have, Bob, is they have those three sections though. What, you'll always take the highest one of those three evaluation sections of the assessment.
No, but I'm talking about for the SEI.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if you were a teacher and you had a lot of mobility,
Yeah.
but you still had a high passing rate within the,
Mhm.
within the school, they kind of
You're
select.
doing, well,
The CEIs and SEIs aren't gonna always be the best category you fall in. It may be peer groups, and it may be passing rate.
Yeah, but CEI is also calculated using kids that are only in your class for the entire year.
Right.
So
That's
I
the
just got a
point.
brand new class a week ago.
right.
I will have had them for 9 weeks. They're not gonna count on my CEI.
Right.
They're not gonna count on the other teacher's CEI. Because that
The
just
first
kind of.
semester won't, second semester.
Right, I'll have them second
So
semester.
mobility is still a variable.
I can't find it there, I don't know.
Well, if that takes into account mobility though. It is a kid that has to be there in August and in May
Yeah,
in
well,
my
those are
class.
continuously enrolled kids, they have to be continuously enrolled.
And that's defined.
Yeah, in that school, in that
It
class.
was huge. We have a very mobile
Yeah.
district. So
Yeah.
again, for a charter, one of the corkscrew reasons, arguments for a standardized curriculum, if I'm starting a school A and wind up in school B, at any given point, I'm roughly where people in A
Mhm.
are in B. So if you're at the very bottom of the curve, you're lost. If you're at the very top of the curve, so what does that say? I can't read it.
Well, this is in an urban district with high student mobility, both in and out of the district. The inclusion of additional years of data significantly reduces. It's talking about how we only go 1 year back and use multiple tests instead of going multiple years because the kids are not there. So it accounts for the mobility, but they look every year to see if it's making a difference significantly. If there's no variance, they'll not use it, so it may have been that that's what we've already controlled for another way. So going back to your second question about the pathways, pathways have nothing to do with accountability.
Okay, didn't know that. So HB5 though dropped Algebra 2. So to say you could get through 4 years of high school, be college ready, and not take Algebra 2 is
Well,
counterintuitive.
on some of the pathways, but in some pathways it's required, but you don't have an EOC test, but it's required to take the course. You've got to have X number of courses on that, but you don't have to have a test.
Doesn't that strike you
But
as
that's
peculiar?
for, because the tests are for graduate. Remember, they had the 15 in the courses, and everybody was like, well, they're not gonna all pass, they're not gonna graduate. So, but the pathways still have them taking the course and taking those courses so that they graduate.
So if I'm on the college ready path, all right, my kids there, they would take the courses, but only Algebra 1's going to get measured.
Or you can measure them with
Accountability, that's
ACPs
why
and
we're
our
not-
final exams and all kinds of things.
Yeah, and there's the,
Now, I'm just old.
Because
Now,
that's
look at you.
I mean, measured as state tests and measured at all are
Well,
two completely
yeah,
different
and
kinds
Well,
of
no, but
things.
the issue, you're incentivizing, not to be argumentative, but that's a discussion we have, because you're incentivizing not taking it, right? Because it doesn't count from a district perspective,
No,
though
but
you're
if you
gonna
want a
count it to
recommended
get to
diploma,
calculus and trig.
They're
Well,
taking pre-cal.
But you're talking campus versus individual.
Yeah.
Dr. Oakley's going to say
well, the
something.
SAT, to do really well on the SAT, you pretty much have to have Algebra 2. So you're taking the course that you're preparing for the SAT.
But
it's not part of accountability.
Right, so if we were to write a charter and we want to override HB5, we could say, hey, we could opt in and everyone's going to get an end-of-year test devised by the DISD for Algebra 2, hypothetically.
Mhm. Well, with the
Hypothetical.
recommended
SAT.
diploma, you have to take Algebra 2 anyway.
Pardon
You're
me?
doing the SAT.
For a recommended diploma, which most of our kids get, they have to have 3 or 4 years of math. So just because there's not a STAR test doesn't mean anything has changed about our
It's the
math
kid-
requirements.
It's the kids who don't get the recommended and how you get tracked into the non-recommended thing that makes me anxious, but we will talk.
And those pathways have changed,
Mhm.
where you go 4 or 5 and distinguish it, and I don't really know that much to say about it, I just know it's changed. Linda Johnson could tell you all about those pathways and all that about college readiness if you wanted her to come.
Yeah, I think, so then the last thing was the achievement gap. You see the headline, African-American scores are going down, Hispanic scores go up and down a little bit, but no one's going forward, at least according to the Dallas Morning News.
That's-
The source of all good things about the For the
That's
record.
index 3 of our accountability.
Pardon me?
Index 3
Yeah, it's
of our
index 3.
accountability
Yeah.
are about the student groups. Always economically disadvantaged, and your prior to lowest groups, and are you moving those kids? That's what index 3 is about in our accountability.
So you can be, so what is the overriding variable, the economics or the race? Economically disadvantaged imputes
Well,
it's African American?
You have all three, so a kid might be in, will be in 2 of them all the time in our case. So
Okay,
economic disadvantage, are you moving them as a whole? Then are you moving our African American, are you moving our Hispanic, if those are the lowest groups?
right. And does it show if it's directionally going down instead of up?
Well, I guess as a district, you compare one year to the next, as hopefully your scores are going up. But we also do, in our Destination 2020 academic targets, we also have an achievement gap. And it has been reducing, but not at a level, not very fast, because all our test data are stable. There's not much movement, so the gaps can't be changing that much. But we have that, we've shown it different places.
So
It's
if I'm
visible different places.
if I'm a low-income, economically disadvantaged African-American family, are you saying my scores in generally are going up, but relative to everyone else is going up, I'm not closing the gap, or in absolute terms, so my score is going down?
A lot of this is so test dependent. If you look at the test.
Well, just give me an example. I'm not trying to do a deposition here. Just
No,
give
I
me an
know, but
example.
I can't answer in generalities because it depends on the test. Some of our tests,
All right, third grade math.
we lost, even at the state level, the percent passing was reduced. It didn't go up. So when you compare it to the state, then you can look.
Well, what conclusions do you draw?
In reading, we've gone down. Gap, I think they're all at equal rate. I don't know, I didn't read the newspaper article, I just know.
Well, I mean, what you know from your own data.
Yeah, it's in some areas being reduced, like the African American math got reduced. I think in reading it widened.
Okay. And the data's online to look at.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Thank you, I'm done. And I apologize, I didn't mean to sound like I'm bullying, it's just frustrating because to get a clear sense of that is going to be really important for our commission. I mean, I've already been hammered by one commissioner about equity and the issue of, is it closing between African American and Hispanic is hugely politically charged, and I'll say that for the record, let alone is it in either group closing for what remaining Anglos we have in the district. And to pretend otherwise is not what we're not listening to what we're being told. And to understand whether that's in fact happening or not is going to be important for us before we opine on what kind of remedies or not we believe is actually going on. And that's the point of my question. And without trying to put the happy face on it, we're going to have to posit to the public that which we've discovered in our journey here, to the best of what we can understand is the facts on the ground and what remedies we might or might not want to propose. This is just one commissioner's talking here. That's why I'm pushing hard on this, because it's not what the school board thinks, it's what we think is going on.
Mhm.
And I'm not, and we'll all have our own opinion because we probably have, we have parents, we have teachers, and you have old codgers like me who are empty nester taxpayers. So it's a good blend. And whether you believe it's going down or up relative to your own group or relative to the people you're comparing it with or relative to national, it's going to be huge. Given what we can't opt out of,
Okay.
what are we going to propose? So thank you. I know I took a lot of time.
No. I think it's all been very good discussion that we're doing. I want to thank you, Dr. Oakley, for coming.
Yes, thank you.
I apologize if I didn't prepare you well enough, so you felt like you were
I
in
just had some questions on who gets tested and cross-eyed. I'm like, what?
But blame him,
Okay.
blame him. All the good we give to him and all the bad we give to him.
Can I get one clarification real quick? You said earlier, and I don't want to just leave this dangling, you said earlier that the ACP is there in terms of measuring teachers, but I think it also has the double benefit or double use of at the same time measuring student knowledge, correct?
Oh, definitely. It's because you're testing the same material that's going to eventually be on the STAR. And then you're also standardizing that final test across the teachers, because teachers can give an easy final exam, a hard exam. I get a B in this class, but I've learned more than a kid that got an A, didn't learn anything. It provides some standardization across the district. I mean, the teachers have the flexibility of teaching however they want, but they have to cover so many student expectations, and we test that.
Okay.
We test that. So, if they did a bang-up job, you're gonna see it on the kids are mastering it, and then they're getting ready for next time.
And I understood that, but because of the recording, I didn't want that just
Yeah,
left out.
thank you, and, yeah, it has a dual purpose.
Okay. So, that concludes this discussion. The next steps, Dino, we are meeting again next Wednesday at 6 PM. And then that's the 19th. And have we been able to line up the presenter?
Hadn't got a confirmation yet, but
Okay.
Who are we asking to come?
It's Dr. Grove, how do you say his name? Grove?
Dr. Larry Gropel.
And I'm gonna invite Edwin, because we're kind of combined our budget
Okay.
and stuff. And if we, maybe next time, or Julie, this is great, if we can take a minute, walk through what I have in front of me, or if you want me to read it, and then we'll come back.
Just read it, you're just looking at my brain on paper.
Okay.
Okay. So, it is now 7:44, and this meeting is now concluded. Okay. Can we turn it off?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, yes, they turned off the TV.
No kidding.